So in the beginning, we have the origins of Yahweh. And the Bible begins with Genesis. The first book of the Bible is called Genesis, which just means birth, or the beginning, okay? And in the beginning, God creates the universe. And then he discovers that he's lonely. There's no one to talk to. It's not very interesting. So he creates man, Adam. But then he thinks that Adam might be lonely as well. So he creates Eve. Okay? And that's the beginning. So then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground. Okay, dust. So man is made of dust. And breathed in his nostrils the breath of life. And then man became a living being. Okay? So God's essence is in Adam. And the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Out of the ground the Lord God made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So this is garden, paradise, called Eden. And man was created in order to farm it, to take care of it, okay? He's basically a servant, a slave. And in the center of the garden are two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life, as you can imagine, grants immortality, right? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil grants the ability to learn. Okay, so let me explain. Let's imagine that there's this wall in front of me. Okay, so I walk, I hit the wall, it hurts, right? But I don't know that hurting is bad. So I keep on, I keep on hitting the wall and I keep on hurting myself, okay? Because I don't know what's good and what's bad. But now if I know what is good and what is bad, I know, okay, I should not hit the wall, okay? I now have the capacity to learn. And over a lifetime, I will learn a lot. This is the secret of creativity, right? What's really important about this idea is that you need to make a mistake for you to know what is good and evil. Okay, so that's why school is stupid. Because school, we tell you, there's a wall, don't touch it because you will hurt yourself. And you don't touch it, you don't hurt yourself, but you never learn for yourself. Because when you hit the wall, you now are able to reflect and understand how the world works. Okay? So the secret to creativity is trying for yourself and learning for yourself what is good and evil. And what this is also saying is that these two things together, creativity plus immortality, allows you to become God. Okay? Does that make sense? Because if you can live forever, but you're always learning, eventually you will absorb all the knowledge of the universe, which is what God is. Okay? God knows everything in the universe. And you can also argue that's why he created us. Because once you are perfection, once you learn everything, you're no longer capable of making mistakes, of learning for yourself. So what you do is you teach students, or you get students to learn for themselves, and that way your knowledge expands. Okay? So it's a really important idea is that man and woman were created to be part of the creative process. Okay? That's why God created us. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. Okay? So again, the man now is basically a servant or slave. And the Lord God commanded the man, you may freely, okay, you can do whatever you want. Okay, this idea of free choice. So if you want people to be creative, you have to give people free choice. Okay? You have to give people the capacity to make mistakes for themselves. Otherwise, they'll never learn for themselves. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat. From the day that you eat of it, you shall die. Okay? Now, what's amazing about the Bible is that it is poetry. Like all poetry, its meaning is very complicated. Okay? There's multiple layers to the meaning here. So, you shall die could mean, okay, the food is poisonous. Okay? Don't eat the apple. It's not the apple. Don't eat the fruit because you'll eat it. It'll be poisonous and then you'll die, okay? But it's also could be interpreted as a punishment, right? If you eat it, I will have to kill you. Okay? All right, so this is a very ambiguous story. And that's what makes the story so amazing, because it is uncertain to us what the true meaning of the Bible is, and therefore we have to keep on thinking about it, discussing it, and finding out for ourselves. And at different stages of our lives, our understanding may be different. Okay? What's also interesting is that God draws attention to one tree but not the other. That's kind of weird, right? There are two trees, the tree of immortality and the tree of learning, but God only says, hey, there's a tree of learning, don't touch that. Which means now that our attention is now focused on this one tree, right? So think of a metaphor. Let's just say that we go to the amusement park, okay? And you're my kids, and I say to you, you can ride any ride you want in this amusement park, but there's a ride called the Dragon Roller Coaster. Do not ride that, or you will die. What do?
Ride that.
You ride that stupid thing, okay? So it's a really strange setup where God knows everything, but he draws our attention to the one thing that he's afraid of, and it's almost like he's pushing us towards that tree. Okay, because again, if you talk to children, you will know that if you warn them not to do something, they'll go and do it. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, again, the nature of God is up for debate. You can say that God is being truthful and literal and says that if you touch that tree, you will die. Okay, so he's being dishonest, basically. Okay, that's one possibility. Another possibility is that he's just stupid. He doesn't really understand how humans work. He created humans, but he doesn't really understand what it means to be a human. And he gave us free choice, so he doesn't really appreciate that we would disobey him, okay? That's another possibility. Now, another possibility, okay, which can also be true, is that it's all part of his plan, right? If he truly wants us to understand free choice, if he truly wants us to be creative, then he needs to allow us to make our own mistake. And so therefore, he's sort of like setting us up, okay? He's sort of like provoking us into making a mistake. All right? Does that make sense? So as you can see how it's only a few words, but it's so complex, and it's an entire universe onto itself. All right? Okay. All right. Now, this is a story of God creating woman, okay, Eve. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man. The man is lonely and he wants a female companion, okay? And he slept, then he took one of his ribs and closed up his place with flesh. The rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. The man said, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one should be called woman, for out of man this one was taken. Okay? Now, you can make the argument that man is superior because man came first. But you could also make the argument that woman is superior because woman is made of higher quality. Woman is made of flesh, right? Man is made out of dust. So this is almost revolutionary, the conception, because you would think that in this world, men are at the top. But this Bible is telling us, no, women are made of higher quality material. They're made of actual flesh, right? And that's why we think that the person who wrote this was actually a woman. And as you read the Bible more and more, you will discover like this genius who wrote the Bible, who first wrote the Bible, was in fact a woman. And that's revolutionary, okay? All right, so therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed, okay? All right, let's continue. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord had made. He said to the woman, did God say, you shall not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. Okay, this is really strange, okay? Because what you will notice is that the serpent chooses to talk to the woman, but not to the man. Okay? And also, what's really interesting is that they're having a debate. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. And then the eyes of both were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loins clothes for themselves. Okay, this is really interesting because the woman is making this decision by herself, right? The serpent says, hey, why don't you judge for yourself whether the fruit is good or not? The woman looks at the fruit and says, I judge for myself, it is good. Okay? This is revolutionary. Where the woman is making the decisions. You would think that once the serpent said this to her, she would go to her husband and say, hey, Adam, the serpent said this. What do you think? Okay? But the woman's like, no, I can see for myself what is true. And then, so she eats the fruit by herself, and then she tells her husband, eat the fruit as well. And the husband follows as well. So this tells us that the real hero of the story is actually the woman. Okay? Okay. Then they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze, and the man and his wife hid themselves in the presence of the God among the trees of the garden. Okay? So they know they're in trouble. They know that God will discover that they ate from the fruit, they ate from the tree, and they're scared. Okay? And the Lord God called the man and said to him, where are you? He said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. So he knows that being naked is wrong, okay? Being naked is bad. Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? The man said, the woman whom you gave to me with me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate. Okay? So the man is blaming the woman. Okay? The man says, it's not my fault. I was just following her, okay? So again, the woman, what's amazing about this is the woman is the hero of the story. Then the Lord God said to the woman, what is it that you have done? The woman said, the serpent tricked me and I ate. Okay? All right. So at this point in the story, what can we expect? We can expect that God will have no choice but to kill Adam and Eve, right? Because God's words were, if you eat from that fruit, you will surely die. And so even though the fruit wasn't poisonous, God still has a duty to kill Adam and Eve. And if we were in the Iliad, okay, then surely Adam and Eve would have died. Because the gods in the Iliad, the Greek gods, most gods, are vengeful. They're wrathful, right? But not this God, okay? Yahweh is different. Okay, look, what happens next is the man named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living, and the Lord God made garments of skins for the man and his wife and clothed them. Instead of being angry at Adam and Eve, he offers them a present. Okay? The question then is, why? Well, there are different possibilities, right? The first possibility is that God himself recognizes that I made a mistake here. I shouldn't have drawn attention to this fruit, right? Therefore, it's my fault. Therefore, this is a God that's capable of self-reflection and forgiveness. Okay, this is revolutionary, guys, okay? Because again, remember, gods at this time are vengeful, wrathful. You must obey them or they will strike you down. But this God is different. This God is like, listen, you should not have eaten that fruit, but it was my fault as well. So I forgive you. He's capable of self-reflection, okay? Another possibility is, again, this is what God wanted all along. Okay? And we know this because the man named his wife Eve. So the man honors his wife, okay, with a name. And it's the mother of all living. Okay? You are the true goddess. Okay? So what happens next is God's like, okay, well, you still disobey me, so I will have to punish you now, okay? So what he does is he punishes the man by making him now have to toil for food, okay? He has to be a farmer. He punishes the woman by making childbirth painful. He punishes the serpent by making him slither on the ground, okay? So this is all good, right? But now what God does is this. He actually throws the Adam and Eve out of the garden, okay? Okay? So why? The Lord God said, see, the man has become like one of us. All right? So Eve did the right thing. Knowing good and evil, and now he might reach out his hand and also take from the tree of life and eat and live forever, okay? So that's what Godhood is. Godhood is the capacity to learn for yourself as well as to live forever. So God's afraid, hey, if Adam and Eve eat that tree of life, they'll become like God as well. Therefore, the God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man, and at east of the Garden of Eden, he placed a cherubim, an angel, and a sword flaming and turning to guard the way to the tree of life. And so this is our banishment from the Garden of Eden. Now, most people think that this is a bad thing, okay? But you can also interpret this as a good thing. So God chose us to make us creative, but without the possibility of living forever. Why? Because if you think about it, creativity is death. Without the concept of death, you cannot be truly creative. Okay? First of all, if you think I'm going to live forever, you're not actually motivated to do anything, right? You're not motivated to make the most of your life. But actually making the most of your life, you can't be creative. Also, if you live forever, your children cannot be creative. Your grandchildren cannot be creative. So for humans to be creative as a species, death must be an inevitability. Okay? Does that make sense? So you can say that, okay, God doesn't really know what he's doing. It's his first time having children. He's making a lot of mistakes. Okay? But you can also say that it's all part of his plan. His plan is to make us creative because that is what's divine. Creativity is what's truly divine. Okay?